It's the Regular Expressions podcast. Join Noah Heldman and Ben Griswold as they talk about technology, consulting, and life. In episode 13, Noah and Ben welcome their first guest, Jeff Treuting, to talk about the past, present, and future of consulting. Oh, and he answers the 5 questions. Hiya, it's Rachel, and I hear Jeff is smarter, funnier, and better looking than our hosts. You be the judge.
Welcome back to the Regex podcast. Today we have our first guest ever, and we'll be diving into consulting, past, present, and future. What's changed, what stayed the same, and what's coming next.
Our guest today is Jeff Treuting. Ben and I have known Jeff for 20 years, I think. We've all worked together on projects, large and small. As you'll see, Jeff's background is pretty similar to ours, which I think makes him the ideal first guest, because if we screw this up, he's got our back. Jeff has run his own company, worked for consulting firms, tiny and gigantic, and has recent experience as CTO for a startup.
We're going to talk about Jeff's journey, how consulting has changed over time, where it's headed, and then wrap up with a rapid 5 questions, which is brand new to the podcast. And we're going to maybe take a look at the lighter side of the consulting industry.
All right, so let's jump in.
Sounds
Jeff,
great.
take us back. How did you first get into tech consulting?
Very early, actually. So, it might not look like it, but I've been doing this for a while, and actually started during the first .com boom, right back in the late 90s. Kind of had my first job, and unsurprisingly, that company did not make it and ended up going under, and that forced me to go get maybe a real job, so to speak. And so I built a reporting system for University of California, Los Angeles. And they hired me as a full-time employee, did it. I forget how many months it took, but I built what I was really proud of as a reporting system. And then they realized that they maybe didn't need a full-time employee ongoing once it was built, right, to maintain it. And so it kind of forced me into going out on my own a little bit, because they said, we want to keep you, we want to keep doing this work with you. And so I kind of had a client, right? So I transitioned from, full-time employment to working for myself with one client being UCLA, that, got me going there without having to jump in, and kind of those risks that come with going out on your own, as you guys well know, as we all well know. And so that made it kind of an easy transition. And I started working for myself at that point, right out of college, and did that for about 10 years. Until I met you guys, actually. And joined another consulting company that we all worked for. So it was kind of a natural transition from one step to the other. Wasn't really a conscious decision or anything. It just kind of flowed from circumstance, I guess. Yeah.
I think remember,
that's how...
Yeah, sorry, Ben. I still remember the first conversation I ever had with you before you joined that company. I was in a gas station down from our office, waiting for my car to get washed. And I don't know why it's such a clear picture in my head, but I felt like I had to prove myself to you, and everything you were saying to me was just making me feel like, oh man, this guy is really smart, and he knows a lot more than I do about the stuff that I'm supposed to be interviewing him about. So hopefully he's a good guy, and we'll get along fine. And thankfully you were.
You have never told me that story, by the way. I do not remember that story, but thank you.
Well, maybe you remember this one, Jeff. So the first time that I encountered you is you flew down from Seattle. It was for one of your clients, or at least he brought you in at this time. And I had built out effectively a prototype, and he's like, hey, Jeff, can you check this out too? See if his shit stinks. And so you did, and we're in this, like a Four Seasons, or not a Four Seasons, but a Hotel 6 or something, right in their conference room. And I do remember how you definitely had opinion of the software, and you were very kind, because I think it was actually pretty darn good.
It was
But
good.
you
It was good.
had thoughts that you were able to share without beating down my ego too hard, which was, I thought, very, very gracious of you. So yeah, that was my first time with you, and I've seen you've been able to deliver maybe uncomfortable messages to both your peers as well as clients. Time
I
and
think
time again over the last 20 years.
You're being too hard on yourself, because I do remember that, and I do remember it was the first time I was hired as a consultant to review other people's code, and I remember. I remember thinking about just like, how would I want to receive stuff, from the other end, because we're all self-conscious about the code we write, or at least I am. I'll speak for myself.
Oh, yes, for sure.
It's never as good as you want it to be, right? You never have enough time. There's constraints that someone looking at it from the outside doesn't know, right? But I do remember having to go research on a topic. I forget what it was, some sort of framework or something that was being used, because I was expected to know about it. So I had to study up on it before doing that. But yeah, you guys did great work. Great work.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I do remember the topic. It was the use of view models in .NET MVC about 4 weeks after that framework was shipped. Yeah, I totally do. And then this is crazy, the stuff that drums up when you see somebody face to face. There was also a form handler pattern that you had suggested as well. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Good
right.
Memory. Look at you. Good memory.
I remember this.
That's all I remember.
I talked to Ben about it. We were kind of like, who is this guy? He's really smart. We either want to work with him or make sure we never have to compete with him. Thankfully,
That's right.
Well, then we joined the same company, so we got to work together, which was, of course, great, and that jump started my career in quite a different way, which has been amazing. So
yes, and speaking of jump starting careers, so we talked a bit already about being that lean consultant. Right, owning your own company, then moving to a modest size consulting firm, 120 people or so, right? And then you worked with one of the big four, and so I'm wondering, what's the difference there for you? Like the main differences between working for Big Four and then working for a modest size lean consulting shop.
Yeah, you would think that everything would be different, and there's actually quite a bit of similarities, which I think is maybe surprising. But what I found was kind of the scale of things, right? So, the scale of the teams that you work with, the number of people on a project that when you're at a certain role that you're, managing or overseeing, right? And managing delivery, the scale of the size of the customer, right? The number of people at the customer, but also maybe the scale of the customer base they have, right? Of, you're building something for millions of people, not hundreds of people, right? That I remember being daunting, right? You come from a smaller shop, and you show up, and I feel like I'm pretty good at what I do. I feel like I know a decent amount about the topics, but you're a little bit like imposter syndrome there, where you're going into these giant companies, right? Social media companies, global, Fortune 100 companies, and having to give advice or run a project or bring, a delivery. And so the scale of it at first was a little overwhelming and daunting. And then you kind of realize that actually there's more that's similar that's different, I think. You get into these companies and you admire them from the outside, and then you're like, wow, they have just as much dysfunction as every other company I've worked with, they don't have everything buttoned up and together. They do have areas to improve, right? And maybe the knowledge I'm bringing can help them, right? So then it kind of eases you into it a little bit, because it kind of brings it back down to earth a little, right? Where you're like, okay, we're all just people, and we're dealing with other people, right? And I think we've talked about this in the past many times, and you know, this is a people business, right? We're there to work with other people. You want to work with people. It's not necessarily some corporate face going against some corporate face, right? You are representing that corporation, but you're a person. It's a human business, right? And so even at that scale, it is still a human business. And I found that refreshing, you know, once you kind of get past some of the shock of the scale, right? That's what comes to mind, at least.
Yeah, I think that's great. We talk a lot about how this is a people business on our show, and it comes back time and time again. If we can start talking tech, and then all of a sudden it shifts to process and people and how to, you know, make sure that you're hearing, mostly like listening well, which I know that's something that you do, which I very much appreciate. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I think that the tech side always just should follow getting the people and the process in order first. So I think of projects that we've all either been a part of or seen our colleagues be a part of, where you might have a 200-person team that someone from our company was brought in to help lead, organize. And I have the same experience, Jeff, that you get into this company, it's the same problems, the same dysfunction, just at a bigger scale, which means you have to go back to the earliest part of the process. Are people talking to each other? And the answer is usually not. Everyone's got their own silos, their own little teams, and maybe there's some attempt at communication, but so many of the projects are consultants coming in and just helping people talk better to each other. And then, what processes are breaking down because we're not talking to each other? How can we improve those to get to the point where talking is more natural? And after that, we can build a technology solution that supports the people and their processes to run more efficiently. Yeah, it's all flipped on its head from when we started.
I think I've told my wife before, when she's asking about, you know, what you're doing at work and whatever. And at one point I said, right now I'm basically being a marriage, you know, counselor. You know, I'm bringing these people together to have them talk because they don't realize that they're not, and how that's affecting other things, right? So whether it's from this business unit to this business unit or whatever it is, sometimes being the outside person coming in can allow you to do that, whereas someone internal, it's harder for them to maybe bridge that gap because you're coming from the outside and saying, hey, did you know that this group is doing that also? Like, you're building this basically the same thing. Does that make sense? Why are you doing that? Let's talk about it. So bringing people together to talk, I've used that analogy of being a marriage therapist or marriage counselor multiple times, because it feels like that's a lot of it, is getting people to talk. Exactly like you said. You know, I've had that experience probably a dozen times, right?
Yeah. And there is this little bit that you mentioned earlier. You were vulnerable, right? You said imposter syndrome, which is easy to consider when you see the customers you're working with on Super Bowl commercials, right? It's like, these are big time. But like, imposter syndrome comes at every single level. I've never met somebody that didn't feel imposter syndrome at some point. But my point being is, not everybody talks about it. And so unless you are being vulnerable and you talk about things along those lines, I'm not sure you can truly establish trust without bringing your true self to the customers. Like, I am human. This is how I'm feeling. This is how I'm seeing. It kind of tends to open everybody up a little bit more and really, you know, just allow you to move forward with a customer as effectively as you can.
That is such a good point. I think that one of the things with my customers, and I think I learned this basically from early on working for myself, right? It was just me, right? I didn't put like a facade up of like a wall or something that, like, you know, it was a very personal relationship. I talked about my kids. I talked about my family. I talked about what I did this weekend. I think that, at least for me, the first like few minutes of a meeting, I am fine just shooting the shit and having small talk. Like, some people are like, no, we got to get down to business. It's like, you actually are forming relationships and like being a person, right? And like if that takes 5 minutes of a 30-minute meeting, I think it's well worth it, right? I don't know if everyone shares that view, but like for me, that has worked really well. Like my kids come in, and interrupt stuff. Luckily, they're at school right now, so they won't. But, that's just part of being human. And we've all been there, especially since COVID, once everyone got used to it.
Yeah.
And I think that does open up those connections, like you were saying, Ben, and being vulnerable is one of those, but also just being authentic. And like, we all have lives and we all have things that are happening, and it might make you have a bad day or something. But if someone understands, that where you're coming from, you can move past those things because they happen to all of us, right? I think it's such a good point. Yeah.
There was a customer that we had at the company we all worked at, and Ben and I were working on this customer for quite a while, years, in fact. And initially, I kind of I was afraid of the main client contact. It was an intense relationship and set of demands. I had the imposter syndrome in spades back at that time. And I just wanted to prove myself, and I totally burned myself out, stressed myself out, and got to the point where I ended up calling this guy late at night, not super late, but after the workday was over, and just saying like, I'm losing it here. I am so overwhelmed. I'm trying to keep up and trying to just stay ahead of everything, and it's not working. And finally saw the human side come back from him, and he was super gracious about it. He's like, yeah, I totally get it. Take the time you need. We'll come back. And it was just, he was in his way of being, of just trying to really whip the team into shape and move it forward. And I just like fell into that set of toxic bad habits. Called him on it, and he's like, oh shoot, yeah, let's take it easy for a while. That really helped just open up the relationship. And it's exactly what you're saying. If I had just started building that relationship from the authenticity and recognizing, we have the same fears and the same hopes and all that from the beginning, I think it would have saved me a lot of trouble. And he's still a good colleague and friend, and still supports us to this day. So that is awesome. But yeah, a little bit of pain we had to go through to learn that lesson.
But I think you still, to bring it back to the original question, I think that you have that also at this larger scale with these giant companies, that you see on billboards and whatever else, and Super Bowl commercials, like you said, Ben, like the individuals you're speaking with, whether it's the CTO or, senior VP of whatever, it's the same. It really does come down to the same. And I am more often pleasantly surprised with every individual that I interact with on a one-on-one basis, right? Like, it's not some taskmaster or someone who's, trying to drive you to, burn it at both ends. When you get to the human connection, it even if there is that, maybe at some level, that's not what it is in a one-on-one interaction, right? Even at these giant companies where people, have are really impressive, to raise through the ranks and become CTO of a company like that. It's still the same, I think, which is so great. And I've found that as I kind of moved up to one of those big four companies, like you said.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so you've been the consultant for a long time, just like Ben and I have, but you also had an opportunity more recently to shift out of the consulting world and into the CTO of a product company, a startup, very different world. And I'm sure there are similarities and differences there, but we're curious about what has been most surprising in that move.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely very different. And I think it would also be a different story if it was going to be a CTO at a more mature product company, right? Because it's a startup, it'll be a different answer than if you ask someone else, right? Who went into some kind of existing company, right? Because I was helping to kind of grow it from the ground up. And so small team, right? 5-6 people kind of as a core. half of those engineers, half of those not, right? So very small teams. And the difference being from where I left, I got much more hands-on, right? I was coding every day, more than a full day. That, can be refreshing, right? As we mature through our careers, you get further away from the code. Some people love that, some people hate that. I tried to find a way to keep some hands-on. I do think that's important for consultants as you move on in your career, because technology moves so fast. If you're not hands-on, you can kind of get to that ivory tower of, kind of saying what should be done from theory, but not really having done it, and knowing really the ins and outs. And I think people can tell at a certain point. So I tried to be hands-on, but that was nothing like this, right? Going to a product company that you're building something, it was hands-on all the time. And then the speed, the pace, right, with a startup is a little bit different with how quickly you want to get out code and iterate. And so I think being the CTO, being the lead engineer, whatever it is at a startup, right? It's all the same, basically. There was a couple kind of core decisions early on that I thought were important that I wanted to take time to make, and then have those decisions kind of fuel the future path, right? So I think there's some decisions that you can make quickly, and pivoting is not hard, right? In software, for some things are really key and core. And if you get them wrong, it can be a hard pivot, right? So you want to take more time with those. So early on, I tried to pick the framework that we were going to build on. And so coming from building for the enterprise, it's a very different thing that we were building at my last consulting company with those large companies. Different frameworks, different technologies, different stacks. Whereas with a startup, I wanted to be able to move as fast as possible and get rid of a lot of the complexity, and be able to develop quickly. And so I was choosing between two frameworks. AWS Amplify had just come out, which was a competitor to Firebase, and Firebase has been around forever. And I basically built a prototype in both of those when I was one of the only couple employees to try to figure out which one to do. And so that was something that I did spend time on. But after that, it was we could make decisions and move super quickly. And we went with Firebase for the record. And that helped us move quickly, not write APIs, not deal with writing SQL and other stuff. It was just be able to go from the client to the server. And that, I think, I don't know if that surprised me, but it was refreshing after kind of, large projects and stuff like that where you're not hands-on. Getting into the code and moving fast just felt like, I don't know, riding a bike or something. Like it felt like exciting to get back into that. And surprisingly, again, imposter syndrome going in, I said, I don't know if I'm going to be that good at being able to do this anymore. It's been, a few years since I've been doing this on a daily basis. But it does come back to you.
Yeah, I heard a lot of you were doing the technical strategy. You were looking at the overall roadmap. You were really enabling your teams to move quickly. That to me is very much like the role of a good CTO. And I'm sure as you reflect your time thus far, you're feeling like great first decision that's really enabled everyone to move quickly. So you must be really stoked on that. Do you find that happens with, in the past while you were consulting, maybe 20 years ago compared to in the last 5? Any differences on how you can start taking some of that thinking that you've done as the CTO and reflect back?
Such a good question. I think that, so much has changed in the last 10 years, right? Even in the last 2 years, it feels like that looking back at my past projects and things when we were working together, I think we started working together in 2012-ish, if I remember correctly. Um, it was a different, it was a different time period as we were moving and cloud was becoming that big thing, right? So I remember early on having decisions to make about, are we going with this cloud thing, or are we going to go with this, more traditional route? And that being like a big decision in a couple projects. And it felt like, one of those bigger decisions where I want to take my time and get this right. Like, what are the benefits of this? It's totally hyped because it's brand new, but does that mean it's the right decision for this customer, right? And I think actually, we went one way with one customer and one way with another customer because they had different circumstances. So it wasn't just we're all moving to the cloud. It was, this one seems right for this problem that we're solving. This one seems like, okay, let's go with a data center, rack space or whatever it was at the time. Which, people are going to say, what are you talking about? If you're of a certain age, you'll remember them. But it wasn't a one size fits all. And so that's where kind of some of that decision making had to come in. And I can't think of one that was necessarily like, oh no, I wish we would have done that differently. But I don't know if you guys remember that time period. That was the big change over the last, I don't know if it's 10, 20, whatever, years in my career. That was the biggest change up until AI now, of course. But can you guys think of something different that I'm missing?
Well, the beginning of my career was 1994, 95. So the internet was pretty new then. So that was just building websites and coding in Perl and CGI bin scripts. That was a weird time, and there wasn't much you could do. But I remember the same thing, going from it taking 4 to 6 weeks to get a new server stood up in a data center, and that was the main delay. And I felt like my superpower back then was telling the person who needed to go and pay for that server and get it racked, and doing that right at the beginning of a project was, I was like a miracle worker, because then it was ready by the time we needed it or shortly after, rather than what tended to happen is, oh yeah, we're ready to go. Oh, it's 4 weeks. You have to wait before we can even start loading things onto the server. So that was massive, massive revolution. And then you just take it in stride eventually. And then when it takes 40 seconds to spin up a server, an EC2 instance, you're like, what? Come on, this should be 5 seconds. So I think the same is going to happen with AI.
Yeah. I think back to just mobile, and I still don't feel comfortable with those decisions, right? There was a time where, yes, we're going to build a web application. And then towards the end, it's like, oh, do we actually make a complementary mobile application to go along with it? It was an afterthought. And then it started shifting to, well, let's start mobile first. And then, well, how are we going to build the mobile app? What stores is it going to be sitting on? Is it going to be a native app, responsive? Still, I feel anytime I have to make those decisions, I'm just stuck. Yeah,
I'm with you on that one. I still don't know the right way to analyze those trade-offs. And actually, at my current company, we decided to go, web application first, because it was our strength and it was the quickest to get something out there, get the feedback, get the iteration on it. But we're gonna have to tackle that mobile piece at some point here.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk a little bit about value and clients who have just maybe a different relationship to what's valuable to them versus what we bring to the table as consultants, and maybe how that conversation, at least in my experience, has to be a discovery conversation to understand what value is. And I find a lot of different customers think about it differently. What have you seen in terms of what clients are expecting, and how do you navigate that relationship?
I think that more recently, if at least it feels like the expectation is moved to providing something tangible much quicker, right? Like I think 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was much more of an appetite for sitting down and doing this full discovery and kind of planning out and mapping more, right? And I don't know if it's the, agile that's affected that and the customer's expectation where we can just get going and it'll be fine, what it is, but or maybe it's the ability to write code and produce stuff so much faster now with the tools we have. But I feel like there's an expectation of providing, I don't want to say value because that's too generic. I think it's providing something tangible quickly, right? And so I remember, in some of my last engagements in consulting, it was talking with my team about what can we actually deliver in the first sprint, right? Like in the first 2 weeks, I want to deliver something. I don't want to deliver a roadmap. I don't want to deliver a plan. I want to deliver something that actually provides value, and isn't just like an incremental step in an overall thing that you still can't use, right? Like what is that first, which I think, as we know, we're supposed to do every sprint, but those first ones, a lot of times can be hard. So it's what, it was, I think there was an expectation of that I was reading the room and wanting to get something out very quickly. I don't remember that as much in the past. That feels like a more recent shift to me. I think it's good in a lot of ways. I think it forces you to think about what problem are you solving, or what sub piece of a problem you can solve quickly to show that they should keep you around, right? Because, some of these engagements start very short and then you prove yourself and they get extended. And so I feel like there's quite a bit of pressure to prove yourself quickly. And that is delivering something tangible in my mind as soon as possible, right? And I like to try to do it in that first sprint. The hardest piece is usually figuring out what that is that's actually valuable to the customer. Breaking down their problems and figuring that out is the challenge, I think.
With that strategy as well, Jeff, there's the opportunity to fail fast, right? There's the opportunity, like right out of the get-go, right? Hopefully you're taking care of one of the more impactful aspects of the project, and we can pivot if need be, right, before wasting any more time down the path. I love that answer. And so it sounds like you were starting to touch upon some things that we might be doing better today than we have maybe 10, 20 years ago. What's something 10, 20 years ago that we were doing quite well, but we've lost that technique or tool or process, over the years? What would you bring back if you could?
Yeah, I love that question. I think what I see being lost is the idea of keep it simple, stupid, right? Like it's okay to deliver code that is simple, right? That solves a problem, is easy to understand, is not over-engineered or abstracted, because in the future I might need, an interface to this, and this. Just keeping it to solving the immediate problem. I feel like we've, as engineers, been told so much about the elegance of abstraction or interfaces or microservices or whatever it might be, that's where we jump to. And we go, okay, I'm going to plan for when this blows up. This is going to be what I'm building right now is going to be so popular that I need to architect it like Netflix did, right? Like I need it to be fully modular and microservice based, because otherwise I'm going to be overwhelmed once this goes viral, right? I don't think that is the right approach. I think that just keeping it simple was something that maybe we used to do because you had a monolith and it was easy to keep it simple because it was a monolith, right? So I think we're starting at a more complex point than we should in a lot of cases when it's not justified. of course, your dozens of users will tell me that I'm wrong on this and that there's the need to do this, that, and the other. And of course, we need to start with these, thinking about scale and things like that. I just think we do it too quickly in most cases. There, of course, are cases for it, 100%. But most of the time, I don't think. So I think keeping it simple is something that maybe we've lost along the way. And I'm a little worried with AI, we're going to keep losing it because AI can write that complex code real easily for us because it's seen it before and there's examples of it. So it does it, but that doesn't mean maintaining it is easy. And so there's still the downside in my mind of doing some of those things too early.
I think from my perspective, I've probably leaned a little bit too far to the keep it simple side because I have the same exact feeling. And if I start to see someone suggesting, massive microservices architecture, Kubernetes in the cloud, it's like, that's probably more complexity than you need. Kafka streams going all over the place, event sourcing, all this stuff. It's like super cool to think about. And the ones who figured it out spent a whole lot of money on some really high talent people to get it there. And now they have the headache of maintaining it at scale, which is really tricky. So yeah, simplify and get something, going back to the value question that we talked about earlier, get something valuable out the door. You can do that if you're simplifying. However, I've found that there's been a bit of a backlash in some of the stuff I follow on this rush to value. And if you're trying to provide a certain kind of value too quickly, you can actually miss the people side, the process side, the things we talked about that have to be foundational. And you might put something out there that is too fast and doesn't solve a problem. And as long as you're getting feedback on it and you're getting feedback from not just a couple people, but all the people who would be impacted by it, then you can iterate and you're back to the people side, right? But if it's just, I got to get this thing out the door in 2 weeks and my one stakeholder saw it and thought, yep, this is cool, you're still potentially setting yourself up for failure down the road. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that there's no hard and fast rules, right? I think that every project I've done is different for however many variables go into it, right? 100 variables with everything of people, technology, whatever it is. And so I have a hard time with there's a rule and I do things this way because I find that is the one thing that I'm maybe hard and fast on, is that there's not a hard and fast rule of how to do development. Everything else is shades of something in reality, I think.
Sure. It goes back to what you were saying as well, Jeff, where with that sprint zero or first sprint, right? The hardest thing is identifying what it is you want to provide in that first sprint. So obviously it's talking to stakeholders, it's listening, it's making sure that you can call out that first sprint outcome and then hopefully hit it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think you're right.
So if we look then at just the things that have changed over time, and obviously AI is changing all kinds of things for us right now. We have our experience over decades of what's worked, what's changed, major shifts in the industry. We're looking at, Ben and I are certainly looking at this lean consulting model, but we have the opportunity to use AI and use it effectively. And AI is kind of a blanket umbrella term, of course, and automation needs to be right there alongside it, because a lot of what people think they need to use AI for is really just better automation, better recognition of inefficiencies and using tools to help. So I'm curious from your perspective, if we have leaner teams, if we have more effective use of automation, and we're using AI in the best way we can, how do you see that helping us deliver better as consultants?
Yeah, I think it will help us deliver faster. I think that there's certain things that it can do really well and will improve kind of our velocity, right? When it comes to, I've never been the biggest fan of writing tests. I know I should be. I know I do it. I just don't love it. I think, Ben, we've had that conversation before, test-driven development and some other stuff. And I do it, right? Don't get me wrong. But it's not my favorite thing. AI can be really good at writing that for us. I think, right? Give it some direction, it can do that. Code reviews, I've been super impressed with on pull request and the code reviews. I've used multiple tools to do it, and some of the ability it has to find little things has impressed me that don't slip through the cracks. So I think if used right, it can be a benefit and help us deliver faster. I think that if used wrong, it can be quite a bit of a downside because it's more maintenance later. The analogy I used about writing some complex stuff that you have to maintain, I think is valid there. I think another shift that might come from this in the consulting space, and trying to read the tea leaves and looking back, I'm sure I'll be wrong, is I wonder if some experienced senior engineers are going to start moving more to like the product side, the requirement side. We've started experimenting with going straight from Jira tickets to having a bot write and put a PR up. And in order to be effective with that, it has to be written well, right? It's a little bit of that prompt engineering. It's a little bit of other stuff. And so having the skills to do that so that you can improve velocity, so that you're writing stories in a way that the AI can take it and be effective with it, is a skill. And I do think a lot of people are saying, okay, product owners will kind of move towards and gravitate towards writing that. And that might be right. I think that the experience of engineering and coding and architecting is a strong skill that will help that. And so I wonder if we'll see a shift of those engineers moving into that, getting these PRs put up there, kind of like working with a junior programmer and reviewing them with the knowledge of an engineer and the knowledge of the code base, and having that be kind of a hybrid product engineer kind of role. I could see a shift moving in that direction based off of this automation and the AI. I'm curious if it'll go that way. We've had, mixed success depending on what we write our stories like, whether, what we affectionately call DevBot, whether DevBot can deliver for us or not, we're still figuring out the right type of work for it to do.
It's a really interesting point, just because you brought up both code review and test writing from AI. And I think those are great examples of things that a lot of developers don't want to do. It's just the necessary evil for good code quality. Right. If we can outsource that to a super encouraging AI bot, it's like, perfect, I'll get right on that. I'm good with it. Code review, there are times when I think that does need to have the human intervention. And it sounds like you were doing that anyway. You're just giving it a chance to catch the little things. And that takes a lot of time, and it can interrupt flow. It's a context switch for a dev on a team to go, all right, let me go into a code review. And I think of one of our colleagues from a while back who is just so dedicated to detailed, brilliant code reviews and so good at it. And I think just gets pleasure out of very constructively taking apart code and finding ways to help you make it better. So that's super cool. And then on the writing side, the prompt engineering side, I did some vibe coding. I think we all have. And then I found this spec-based coding approach that Amazon first introduced with their IDE Kiro, and it's now kind of coming into fashion with other tools. And I found putting my energy into a really, really well-crafted spec is better for my brain to think through all of the sides of the problem. And of course, it's a much more effective structure for AI to execute on effectively. So that's going to be a really, really critical skill as we go forward.
Yeah, it's a different way of thinking about coding, right? Not typing the actual characters, right? What is the output of what's in our brain, right? It's how do you get there, as opposed to having to type it yourself. I do think that is a good way to do it with the spec-based approach. I've fooled with that a little bit, and it definitely improves output for sure. I think we're all kind of learning, everyone in the industry right now, what are the right things for it to solve? What is going to be more of a headache of this 2-hour session of me banging my head against the wall because it's not listening, right? What I did with Cursor, just to make myself at least get some joy out of our interaction, is I gave it a persona. So I ask it to be Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and so it's at least awesome. Entertaining when it's helping me out.
I love that.
So I have to, or maybe we have to ask you a pretty selfish question now. So both Noah and I, spinning up our own consulting firms. You, Jeff, have had your own consulting firm. So if you were to do it all again, what would you do differently?
I'm sure there's too long list to go through. But if I were to start today, I think the instinct that everyone has if they're starting consulting today is we're doing this AI first thing because that's the wave, right? And we're going to position ourselves there. I think I would almost counter position a little bit and go back to the basics of saying, you know what? We are very experienced engineers. We've seen these problems. We will be able to work with you to solve your problem, right? This isn't just a coding shop. This is a problem solving shop, right? Again, going back to that personal stuff, because that is a skill. That is a skill that you all have, honed over the last 20 something years, whatever it might be. You all started coding very early, obviously. And so I would almost position it that way as to the senior engineer, the experienced engineer. Yes, we're going to use AI, but AI needs the experienced engineer to check it, right? Because it's going to go down a path. And I've seen this too much with folks that don't have experience, where, well, that looks good. Okay. Oh, that looks good. And then it builds on itself, right? Like once you get some of those patterns in the code base, it's going to follow those, right? And so you need the experience and the skill to set it up for success if you're going to use it. So yes, I would still use it, of course, but I wouldn't position it as just, we can cut costs because we can have less people, junior people, and AI, and we're going to be able to crank out code for you. It's almost like counter positioning against that a little bit. And I think if you were serious about being selfish and asking the question, I think for our stage of our career, all of us, that's our value that we can bring. That's something that can differentiate us and be very useful from a consulting perspective, right? With age comes experience, and that's important, whether it's technology or any other kind of consulting.
Yes, totally selfish. I find I think this is a loose form of an interview, but almost every interview I've held, I ask at least one question for a problem that I really need the solution for. And I love hearing, some of those good ideas. So yes, always some selfishness involved on my side.
It's your form. Do with it what you want.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think it's just really validating because I think that's how Ben and I have approached our partnership from that value of experience and from breaking it down to relationships and people and understanding problems at their root. So that's great to hear. That's awesome. Thank you for that. We're doing it okay, Ben. We're going to make it.
So far, so good.
So we're going to shift now to our rapid fire 5 questions. And we did it ourselves to each other in our last episode. And now we're going to do it with every guest we bring on. So you're the first official guest to go through the ringer on this. Are you ready?
All right. I am. This sounds like this is going to be simple. Right, Ben?
Yes. At the end of the day, we're going to have 5 new answers to our questions.
All right.
Well done. Well done.
Nice.
First question, what is the buzzword or phrase you'd love to ban from consulting forever?
Yeah, there's a lot. The one the one that I thought of, and I'm guilty of this as anyone else, is let's take that offline. What does that mean? We're not meeting for coffee. We're just gonna have another Zoom call. We're not taking it offline.
That's right. Let's take it online in a different way.
Yeah. Online later. Yeah.
Love it.
All right. What's a small habit or tool that makes your workday 10 times better?
Going for a run. I've just started picking that up again, and I solve more problems away from the keyboard running than I do probably at the keyboard. It feels like.
Oh, that's a good one. I used to run more, and I'm not running now, and I might have to start again. If it makes it 10 times better,
yeah, it helps clear your head for sure.
Yeah, I solve problems in the shower. I need to take more showers. That twice a week thing isn't working for me.
And that waterproof laptop you've got is really helping.
It's the best.
All right. Number 3, think back to a big career mistake or a funny fail. What happened?
So this one, I think, Noah, you're a little bit involved in. This is early on. We were talking about the cloud, and this was a project that I was leading where Noah said, you should do this in Azure. I said, okay, I've never done it in Azure. Sure, that sounds great. Let's do it. So we built this website, and it had a customer support number on it. And I asked the client, what number do you want to put on there? We put on this phone number. About, a day after we released it, they're like, what is going on? Our CEO keeps getting called on his cell phone asking for support for this website. I was like, that's the number you gave me. So I put it up there. And so I was like, right? Let me go solve it. I got onto the server, like SSH'd onto the server, changed the phone number. Whew, thank God. Okay. Changed it in the source code. All right, we're good. Not realizing this was the cloud and this was a very new thing to me, it spins itself up and down every once in a while. So the next day, it had recycled itself before we deployed again, and the CEO's phone number was back on the website getting phone calls again because I didn't know enough about the cloud, I hate to admit, that it would magically spin itself up and down before my next deployment. So, yeah, that was not great.
That's awesome. I love it. All right. Keeping up with the rapid questions.
Yeah.
What's the next big thing in tech consulting, Jeff? And you cannot say AI.
I think it's an output of AI. Maybe that's okay, or an outcome of it. I think I could see a future where consulting, at least on the tech side, moves more towards outcome-based pricing. So did you reach certain goals or metrics, and having pricing based off of that instead of hourly? As the amount of output we can do with AI goes up, some of these larger consulting companies, right, you have to solve your pricing models, and you can't do it with pure hours necessarily. So I could see that happening. I could also be totally wrong, but I see that maybe as a future.
That's super interesting. So you see that as like a fixed fee almost? You're defining the outcomes up front?
Based off of targets, right? You can base it off of like revenue growth or, I don't know, some sort of metric, right? And it's almost like that equity-based pricing where you get some equity in the company that, it doesn't happen all that often. But if you tie your work to the outcome as opposed to hours, it changes a little bit the dynamic of what you could do instead of just a project-based fee. Also, is we've done that before. We've all done
Gotcha. That. Okay.
I remember a presentation that we had at my first consulting company. So this was back in 1998, and this guy came in and did a presentation on value-based pricing, and it totally resonated with me at the time. It's the same basic idea.
Yeah.
And it has just been ceaselessly mocked since that presentation, including by our company's CEO right after it, where he brought us all together after this guy left and said, well, that was a huge waste of time. We're never doing value-based pricing. That's ridiculous. And I'm thinking, I think it's a great idea. So
I mean, there's a risk. There's a risk, right? Of course, there's a risk. So yeah, I could be wrong. I probably will be wrong. That's a bit of a swing, but I could see it happening because of the changes that AI is bringing to headcounts, leaner teams, all that kind of stuff.
Totally. I think you're right. So we'll see. I will put money on it. And Ben, I don't know if you're with us or against us. Doesn't matter. No comment.
Non-committal.
All right. Last question, and then we're going to wrap it up here. If you could instantly master one new skill to make you a better consultant, what would it be?
So it's funny, what I wrote down here, thinking about this earlier, you did give me a cheat sheet, just so everybody knows. And I wrote down getting better at active listening. And so I do think I'm okay at it, but I do find my mind wanders to, oh, I have an answer for what you just said. And I might miss a little bit at the end. So I try to get better at that consciously. But it's funny because you mentioned, Ben, that you said I was a good listener earlier, I think. So,
you heard that
out. I did.
You heard that, did you?
I did hear that. And so I was going to change my answer, but I'm sticking with it. If I could master that, instead of incrementally getting better at it over time, that I think is a key skill in consulting, and that would be amazing.
And that's a great answer. Yeah. Well done. Hey, thanks for completing our rapid 5 questions. First person ever.
I think third person ever.
Well,
first real person.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Thanks for calling me on that. Very good.
Wow. They're good questions. I like them.
Yeah. Yeah. It was super fun. We can't wait to see how many other smart things have been shared with us or will be shared with us. It's going to be really good. So Jeff, thanks for jumping on with us today. Really do appreciate you talking about your consulting life from past, the present, and a little bit of the future.
Yeah. We will be back soon with another conversation and another guest, get more perspectives on the industry, and hopefully have some fun.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. See you all next time on the Red Jacks podcast.